You know what's funny? You win a tournament. You're standing there with a trophy in your hands, cameras everywhere, champagne probably nearby, and most people in that moment are going to talk about themselves, their journey, their hard work, how much the title means to them. Jessica Pegula did something different. She won the Dubai Open, a genuine high-quality title at a prestigious WTA event, and the first thing she wanted to talk about wasn't herself. She pivoted the conversation to another player, a younger player. A player who in Pegula's eyes is being done dirty by the very organization that's supposed to be lifting her up. And look, Pegula isn't exactly known for being a firebrand. She's not someone who shows up to press conferences ready to blow the roof off. She's measured. She picks her spots. So when she decides to go there, when she decides to use her winner's platform to call out a structural problem, people should probably pay attention. She was talking about Eala, and she wasn't quiet about it. Let me set the scene properly, because context matters here. Eala is 20 years old. She's Filipino. She came up through the Rafa Nadal Academy, which is already a remarkable story before you even get to her actual tennis. She's been putting results together at a rate that has legitimately surprised people on tour. Not fans, not casual observers, actual touring professionals who know what it takes to survive at this level. She is, without exaggeration, the most significant tennis player her country has ever produced. The Philippines has over 110 million people. They are passionate, they are loud, and when one of their own is competing on a world stage, they show up. They show up in person, they show up online, they show up in every measurable way, and that's exactly what makes what's been happening to Eala on the scheduling front so hard to wrap your head around. Because the WTA has again and again looked at the data, looked at the ticket demand, the fan energy, the viral moments, the sold-out queues, and kept putting her on smaller courts. And Pegula, fresh off winning Dubai, decided that was worth addressing, publicly, at the trophy ceremony. That's a choice, that's intentional. And it landed. Here's what Pegula actually said, and I want to spend some time on this because there's a lot in it. She brought up her own match against Eala at the Miami Open. Now, Pegula is from Miami, she grew up there, she's a home favorite. The crowd typically rides for her down in South Florida. She expected to walk into that match and have the room on her side. That is not what happened. She described walking in and just stopping, looking around, being genuinely confused by the atmosphere. The crowd was not just against her, which would be one thing. It was the sheer scale of support that Eala had drawn that floored her. People she had never seen at a tennis match in her life were packed into that venue. Families, groups of friends, people in Filipino colors, people who had clearly not come to watch tennis generally. They had come specifically to watch this one person. I played her when she kind of broke out last year in Miami, and I'm from there, and the whole crowd was against me, and I was like, what? What on earth is going on? Like, where did these people come from? And she said it with a kind of delighted bewilderment, which I think is important. She wasn't complaining. She found it remarkable. She found it exciting. She recognized it for what it was, a genuinely rare thing, a player who had tapped into something that most athletes spend entire careers chasing and never find, that authentic, spontaneous, massive audience. And then she connected that moment to something that happened at the Australian Open. And this is where her comments shifted from observational to pointed. The Australian Open, January, one of the 4 biggest tennis events in the world, by multiple accounts, and Pegula confirmed this directly. The 2025 Australian Open saw some of its best crowd numbers in history, record-breaking attendance figures, the kind of turnout that tournament directors and broadcasters put in their year-end reports as evidence of the sport's growth. And a significant portion of that record crowd came specifically because Eala was in the draw. Fans flew in from the Philippines, from across Southeast Asia, from wherever Eala's community lives and watches and follows. They booked flights and hotels and ground transport. They made the trip. They arrived at Melbourne Park, ready to be part of something, and they found themselves standing outside, not inside the venue, enjoying the match. Outside, wrapped around the stadium, in queues that weren't moving fast enough, trying to get through doors that were already at capacity. Because the WTA, with all of this information available to them, had scheduled Eala on a court that could not hold the crowd she was drawing. I think it was Eala's match that I was looking at, and there were people like wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in, which is pretty crazy. People who had spent real money, real time, real effort to be there for their player, for their moment, ended up outside, couldn't get in, watched it on their phones, or didn't watch it at all, missed it. And then Eala lost that match, and those fans who had come all that way had nothing. Now, I want to be careful here, because I don't think it's useful to assume the worst of everyone involved. Scheduling at a Grand Slam is genuinely complicated. There are multiple courts running simultaneously. There are broadcast commitments. There are sponsor obligations. There is weather to account for. There's the draw itself and how matches played out across earlier rounds. It's not always as simple as pointing at a number and saying put the biggest draw on the biggest court. But there comes a point where you've seen the pattern enough times that the complexity argument stops being satisfying. This isn't the first tournament. This isn't the first time Eala has been placed on a court that couldn't hold her crowd. This isn't a one-off scheduling quirk. It's happening repeatedly, and the people noticing it aren't just her fans. They're players, legends of the game, commentators, tournament insiders. Pegula put it simply, It was disrespect toward Eala, toward her fans, toward the momentum she's built. And then there's Novak Djokovic. I mean, come on, when Djokovic steps into a conversation, it becomes a different kind of conversation. This is a man with 24 Grand Slam titles. He's seen every version of this sport. He's seen stars come and go. He's seen scheduling politics. He's seen favorites get the prime spots and smaller names get buried in the schedule. He knows how this game is played. And he looked at Eala's situation and said what needed to be said. He called her the greatest tennis player the Philippines has ever produced. He acknowledged that the scheduling decisions around her court assignments had contributed to difficult conditions in her matches. He said directly that she is a big deal, that her country is a big country with big interest, and that she deserves to be treated accordingly. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's big interest. When Djokovic says that, the conversation moves out of fan frustration territory and into something more serious, because this is a man with credibility that can't be argued away. He's not going to say something like this lightly. He's not doing it for clicks or engagements or because he has something to gain. He said it because he observed the situation and called it honestly. And he wasn't the only one. There was also an incident, and I need to bring this up because it was genuinely strange that happened during one of Eala's matches, where an official approached her at a critical moment in the game about items in her bag. Now, I'm not going to tell you that was definitely deliberate. I don't know that. Nobody outside of that official can say for certain what was in their head. But I will say this, the timing of it, the moment it happened, the effect it had on Eala's momentum at a pivotal point in the match, all of it was noticed. By players, by commentators, by the broader tennis community. And the conversation it sparked wasn't comfortable for the WTA. Because when you layer that incident on top of the repeated court scheduling issues, on top of the record crowds being turned away, on top of the pattern that multiple credible voices have now identified and spoken about, it doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like a story. And stories have a way of getting out. Here's what I find genuinely compelling about all of this though. And I want to shift from frustration for a second to something more interesting. Eala is 20 years old and she is becoming the subject of serious advocacy from some of the most respected names in the sport. That doesn't happen to just anyone. That doesn't happen to players who are merely decent or merely promising. That happens to players who represent something that people feel strongly about protecting. Pegula could have stood at that Dubai trophy presentation and talked about her own journey. God knows she had the material. She's dealt with health setbacks. She's had a long path to a title like this. Her story is genuinely compelling. But she chose to use that moment to talk about someone else. That tells you how strongly she feels about this. And Eala herself has responded to all of these obstacles. Every small court, every awkward scheduling decision, every disruptive incident by continuing to win, by continuing to build, by continuing to show up and perform and grow her game and expand her following and give her people reasons to believe. That's not nothing, that's actually everything. Let me tell you about the Dubai Open since we're here, and since it's actually relevant to understanding the full picture. Pegula was painting. Pegula had an outstanding tournament. She was clean through her matches. She was aggressive. She was the kind of controlled and confident version of herself that you see when everything is clicking. Winning Dubai is not a small thing. It's a real title against real competition on a surface that rewards quality. And the fact that she used the winner's podium to speak about Eala tells you something about the culture forming around this younger player. It's not just fans defending her. It's established professionals voluntarily choosing to attach themselves to her story and to advocate for her, even when they have no obligation to do so. That's influence. That's the kind of thing that doesn't show up in world rankings, but shapes how a player's career develops. The people around you, the support you have, the voices willing to speak up for you, all of that matters. So what actually needs to happen? That's the question, right? Because criticism without a solution is just venting. And I don't think Pegula or Djokovic or anyone else raising these issues is just venting. They're trying to push the WTA toward a specific outcome. The outcome is simple. Put Eala on courts that can hold the crowds she draws. Look at the data. Look at ticket demand. Look at which matches are generating the most traffic, the most social media activity, the most pre-tournament conversation. Look at where the people are trying to go, and then schedule accordingly. That's the job. That's what smart tournament management looks like. It's not ideological, it's not political, it's not about favorites or nationality or anything else. It's basic logistics informed by real evidence. The evidence says Eala draws massive crowds. The evidence says those crowds are being underserved by small court assignments. The evidence says this is a problem with a simple solution. The only question is whether the WTA is paying attention. And if they're not, people like Pegula and Djokovic are going to keep making noise until they do. I also think it's worth sitting with the bigger picture for a second because Eala's story is not just about tennis. Southeast Asia has been a growing market for tennis for years. The WTA has talked about global expansion, about reaching new audiences, about making the sport relevant beyond its traditional strongholds in Europe and North America. That's a real strategic goal they've articulated many times. And then they have, organically, without any marketing campaign or promotional push, a player from the Philippines who has become a phenomenon in that exact region. Fans across Asia are engaged because of her. Television numbers in those markets move because of her. The pipeline of young players who might look at tennis as a viable dream is expanding because of her. This is what they've been trying to build, and it arrived, and the appropriate response is to give it a center court. Not because she has the ranking of a center court player necessarily though she's climbing, but because the moment demands it. Because the crowds demand it. Because the story demands it. You don't put a packed house in a closet, you find a bigger room. It's something I want to address, because I think fair-minded people will raise it. Does Eala's ranking justify the bigger courts? She's young, she's still ascending. Her ranking doesn't yet reflect the kind of positioning you traditionally associate with prime scheduling slots. And that's a legitimate point in a vacuum. Rankings exist for a reason. The structure of how courts get assigned has logic behind it. But tennis has a long history of making exceptions to the ranking rule when the situation calls for it. When a local favorite plays at their home tournament. When a wildcard is generating massive public interest. When a storyline is too compelling to bury on a side court. These calls get made all the time, and they're made precisely because the sport recognizes that pure ranking math doesn't always capture the full value a player brings to a given event. Eala brings value that is almost impossible to overstate in certain contexts. The Australian Open crowd data, the Miami atmosphere, the Dubai energy, these aren't small data points. And the reasonable, defensible, completely sensible response to that data is to schedule accordingly. The fact that this conversation is still happening, that Pegula is still making this point after multiple tournaments, that Djokovic felt the need to weigh in, that fans continue to show up and be turned away, suggests the response hasn't been sufficient. And until it is, the conversation is going to continue. Loudly. Here's where I land on all of this. Alex Eala is going to be fine. I say that not to minimize any of the frustration or to dismiss the legitimate criticism of how she's been handled. I say it because everything about her trajectory suggests someone who is not going to be stopped by adverse conditions. She has handled every difficult circumstance with a composure that is genuinely unusual for someone her age. She has continued to improve. She has continued to build her fan base. She has continued to compete with players who have years of experience on her. She is 20 years old and Novak Djokovic is talking about her. She is 20 years old and a Dubai Open champion used her winner's speech to advocate for her. She is 20 years old and people are flying across the Pacific Ocean to watch her play tennis. None of that is going away. If anything, it's accelerating. The WTA has an opportunity here. They can get ahead of this. They can recognize what they have, a generational talent with a global following in a region they've been trying to reach and treat it accordingly. Give her the courts, give her the scheduling, give her fans the experience they've earned through years of passionate support. Or they can keep doing what they've been doing, and the criticism will keep coming. From Pegula, from Djokovic, from every corner of the tennis world that can see what's in front of them. Week after week, as she has done well and established herself as a really good player on tour, they all come out to support her. That's Pegula. And she's right. Week after week, Eala delivers. Week after week, her fans show up. The only thing left is for the WTA to show up too. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. It actually helps more than you'd think. And if you want more tennis content that actually goes beyond the surface, subscribe. We go deep on the stories that matter.